There's a lot of excitement around here tonight. This is called Hello, Welcome to the Real World, where things never go as planned. It's like the story of my life. Oh, there's Leslie.
Hello.
Hey.
It's so good to see you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, this kind of thing is it's such a cluster. I mean, you do it about 5 times and then you're like, now I've got it. It's tricky.
Yeah. Well, and I had all my security things, so it's good to see you.
Oh, well, that was probably smart. That's probably why I'm getting like hacked every 5 minutes.
I also am upset that you changed out of your towel because I thought maybe I should wear a towel too.
Well, there's a real fear when I'm in a towel and like doing a video that I was like, I'll turn the video and then I'm like, oh no, like it's going to be in a mirror and then they're going to be like, it's only fans, not tails. It's going to be bad. Anyway. So thank you so much for joining me, Leslie. And you might not remember this, but we met years ago
In the pool.
in the pool.
I
So
remember.
yes, you and I and Monica, who,
Yeah.
hires me for a lot of stuff, which is awesome. And we were like, I said, we were talking, she and I were texting earlier, and I was like, but I have no idea what we talked about. But I remember thinking like, wow, this responsibility.org is pretty cool. I'd heard of it, but didn't really know much
Yeah.
about the organization. So tell us a little bit about it just before we get started on all the things I've done wrong as
Yeah.
a parent.
Sure. I'm glad to. I remember that like it was yesterday, by the way. So
Oh, good.
you're very memorable. Responsibility.org is funded by the nation's largest distillers. They have to opt in to be part of our membership. And we do 3 things. We fight underage drinking, we fight drunk driving, and we promote responsible consumption if people choose to drink. Not everyone should drink. And we always make it really clear that that's something that people should think about.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what responsibility.org does. And we've been around for over 30 years doing this great work. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah. And tell me something. So during COVID, that didn't really change our drinking numbers.
No, I mean, actually, underage drinking, the stats now, I could hear you talking about them earlier. The stats are actually a little bit lower than pre-pandemic levels. Underage drinking has gone down over the past, few decades.
Right.
So the numbers are going in the right direction,
Okay.
but, we always say parents, caregivers, school nurses, school counselors, school administrators still need to do this work to make sure those numbers continue to decline.
So somebody had just asked me, we were over on Facebook and then started in here to get you on. And they said, when did you have your first drink? And I tell you what, I've never thought about that. Well, I thought about it, but I've never talked about it. But I try to be honest, but I was like, wow, I was 12.
Yeah.
And that was 1987. I had an older sibling, and there was, and nothing against my parents, because I think they did a lot of things really right. It was no motorcycles and no drugs were kind of the general rules at my house. But I will say there was alcohol, and we had a huge bar in our living room, and alcohol was around a lot. And I don't necessarily remember them really drinking, but it was around.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have 3 teenagers, and it's hard to not take the way you were raised or how you did things and apply it to your own kids. And I think we're all kind of told these things like, wow, well, they're going to learn to drink, so we're going to teach them. We hear that about social media too, and I have opinions about that. And so it's like, I want to know the right thing to do. And I think there are a lot of us that do. We don't know what it is, but we want to do better for our kids. And that's kind of where I am. And I think a week ago, with the drunk driving in Folly Beach, this woman leaves in her wedding dress and never makes it to her destination. And from her wedding reception, and a 25-year-old was going 65 miles an hour drunk hits them, she's killed. And when I went to look at this, the drunk drivers Facebook and Instagram, which is kind of my go-to, I just saw, I don't know if you've looked at it, but I just saw this trajectory of alcohol, right?
Mhm.
And, it was Bud Light Girl instead of Buzz Lightyear for Halloween. And it was from 18 to 25, it was alcohol.
Mhm.
And I thought, what? I don't know her family situation. I don't know anything, but I know if I were the mama, I would want to say, well, we did everything right. Like, we talked to Leslie, we knew what to do, and my
Mhm.
child still made a bad decision, but I know it's not on me. So
Right.
I think that's a lot of times where I come from things, which right or wrong, I don't know, but it's prom, it's graduation. I know we had prom in our small town. And it was like, well, they all go to the beach. Well, I mean, I know beach equates with drinking, and parents seem to be okay with that. And
Mhm.
they're driving alcohol. And it's like, that doesn't feel right to me. So,
Right.
I want to know, how do we raise kids to make responsible choices?
Right. I mean, I wish I had an answer for every
So now that's all I need to know
for
from you. That's it.
everything. Yeah, for everything you just asked. But I think what parents don't, what parents should reflect on is not all kids are drinking. As they get older, as kids get older, more and more kids do drink, but it's still under 30%. So it's not
That's
even
pretty
it's
low
a
then.
minority of kids. So
So they're less likely to be drinking than they are having sex.
I can't answer that.
Well, I
But
think that I
yes, I
think the
think that's
stat
probably true if you
I think
compare
the
those 2
stat for
stats.
sex is like
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah, I think if you're comparing it that way, yes.
Huh. Okay.
But I think the majority
That's
of kids are not drinking, and I think,
right.
parents see that. They see people going to beach week or after prom parties and whatnot, and it's not all the kids. And, again, you don't see all the kids that aren't there and the choices that they're making. So, I think parents should sometimes of course, you want your kids to have a good time. You want them to be social, but I think sometimes parents should reflect on, are they reliving their childhood? Are they being the best parent they can to their kid? Do they want their kid to be popular? Whatever it may be, parents should sometimes reflect on that before they send their kid out for the evening.
And that, I've noticed that, but it's interesting to hear you say it, because the things that I say or espouse are totally not related to research. They're from
I
my
think,
qualitative observations of what I witness.
yeah,
And I do feel like there are these parents that are like, it's like they're back in high school.
yeah. And you see that sometimes, and that's concerning, when you see parents. I've heard a number of stories recently where parents will take their kids away, and just because they're in another country, they think that behavior is okay. And I understand logically why that's happening, but I do think parents need to reflect on that message that they're sending. It is a double standard, and it is illegal here. So, and there is a reason for it. Most kids, their brains aren't fully developed till 25. So, those kids just aren't making good decisions, especially if they're drinking.
So that leads me in, and this is not to like stop our conversation, but since I'm asking the questions, my son, we were in Europe this summer with my parents, and my son is 17, and my dad said, I think it's okay if he tastes wine or whatever. And I really hadn't had time to think about it, and I didn't, and I let him. So I would let him taste my wine. But then tonight I was thinking, well, is that the wrong thing? Was that wrong?
Yeah, and I can't only you're the parent. I
Yeah,
heard you
but
talking
I
about that
know,
earlier,
but
but
I think when I say, is that wrong? I want to know if the decisions I'm making are going to encourage poor behavior later on.
right. And you also don't seem like a poor role model for your kids, right? So there are probably parents out there who maybe let their kids indulge illegally in alcohol and probably aren't a very good role model. You probably are a very good role model and don't overconsume and do all the things in front of your kids. So I think that conversation is probably very healthy between the two of you or between your
Right.
family. But that's just it. The parents sort of giving their kid and wielding that influence is the most protective factor in a kid's choice to drink or not to drink.
Now say that
So,
again. What is
so,
the
so your values and your conversations with your kids about alcohol is the biggest protective factor in their choice to drink or not to drink.
so
And your question about onset, or we call it onset. Most people call it first drink, right? So
right,
the stats would say that if your first drink was around 12, you're more likely to have an alcohol use disorder later in your life. So the later we can get kids to get to that first drink, the safer they're going to be long term.
right, right. So Jessica's just said something that I think
I
is
wish
kind
I
of
could see.
interesting. She said, "I love drinking, but I won't encourage my child to do it." And so I guess that was really my next question is what is it, actions or words that speak the loudest?
Both.
Both.
Both. I mean, it's not do what I say what I do. I mean, in the pandemic, so many of us would have, I mean, I love a good cocktail. I love a good glass of wine. Responsibility.org is not prudish about that, right? We want people to have a
Responsible.
nice time responsibly. Correct, right? But during the pandemic, if parents were, that was probably the first time most kids could see their parents doing sort of those online happy hours.
Mm,
And that was really critical because if the kid saw the parent acting very irresponsibly, that's not a good message to send. But if the kid saw the parent mixing a cocktail, enjoying it slowly, and it's an adult beverage, just like many other things that adults do that kids don't, that to me seems like good role modeling for those kids. I did that in my own household.
right, right. Yeah, because I love to have a drink and I don't um but I think I'm also super aware more lately. So my kids are 17, 15, and 13 now, but I'm really aware of and I remember being at about 13 and like noticing my parents drinking, and we didn't really have any conversations about it. It was
Yeah.
just, there wasn't talking. So I want to talk about it, but like, boy, it just this open discussion, of um and they, mom, we're not, but it's like it's also one thing I find is hard is this. I really don't want you to drink. It's illegal. Your brain's not developed. But if you drink, you cannot drive. And
Right.
so I wonder, I always wonder, like, well, how is that? And we had a situation over Christmas. My son Thomas was probably, I don't think he would mind that I told, but he said, he drove my car. And I said, no, there's no drinking and driving. Like, that's a done deal. And he said, yes, I have that. And I said, okay, so you're good to drive. Well, later that night, he called and said, we're in wherever, the little town nearby. And it was 11 o'clock. And I think we should just spend the night here. And I said, okay. Or he said, or if you and daddy could come get me. Well, at that point, we had both probably had a drink and it
Mhm.
was Friday night. And so I said, no, that's fine to spend the night there. So, I think at the end of the day, I had wondered, like, well, is that giving permission to drink? But that's my main concern is I
Yeah.
want everybody to be safe.
Correct. That should be numero one priority. Yes.
That's number one is safety. And then the next one is this,
Right.
boy,
Right. And the fact that he called you, right? You knew where he was. He called you. That sounds like a great relationship.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but he was a little bit sneaky. See, I think he knew he wanted to spend the night there and I would have said no. So
Well, you know your kid better than I do, but
well, I know myself,
yeah,
I'm coming back to haunt myself and my children.
don't we all?
They're wiser than I am.
Yeah.
So how do we do it? I think y'all have helped me be really aware of. I think recently I did a video and I was like, I'm not buying the pajamas with wine glasses all over.
Yes.
Like, because
Right.
I feel like these moms, it's like mommy bloggers, we need wine, or at Target, buy a mom a cocktail for Mother's Day. And
Yes.
it's too much.
It's too much. And it normalizes and makes people think that everyone is behaving that way. And the reality is they're just not. right? So I wonder, was it Jessica that made the comment earlier? Jennifer, Jessica, that you
Yes.
mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if what she really means is, she enjoys her, whatever alcohol she's having, fine, like that's fine, but she doesn't want it glamorized for her kids, right? So
Right.
I think that's a difference between us, those of us who grew up sort of in the 80s, 90s versus now, right? So it's alcohol should never be the punchline. It should not be. I don't walk in at the end of my day and say, "Oh my gosh, I have to have a drink. It's been a
Right.
horrible day."
Right. Right.
It's you just have to be very mindful about sort of how your kids see you reacting to stress and
Hmm.
how you sort of handle yourself in those stressful moments.
Oh, oh, that's interesting. And not, yeah, not, ugh, just not buying the pajamas, not,
Right.
I'm not putting post up. I mean, you'll see me with a drink again, but it's not my go-to of, boy, autism is stressful, I'm going to have a drink.
Exactly. Right. It's which I'm glad you don't do that.
Well, if I did, I'd be drinking all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in my family, alcoholism is on both sides, and
Mhm.
I'm aware of that. And I think I was like that with cigarettes. I mean, if anybody loved a cigarette, it was me. I cannot smoke just one cigarette.
Mhm.
I can't smoke. Now I can have a drink and go 3 weeks and not have another drink, but I at least understand it to some degree for people that are alcoholics, because
Right.
that's how I am with tobacco,
Right.
uh, which is, and it stinks. It's I know that's hard for folks, but wanting your children to know how much of that is genetic.
A lot. A lot, an addictive personality, a lot of that is genetic. So I think if folks do have a family history of that, just like you talk about other health issues, parents should talk to their kids about that as well. It's critical that those kids know that.
Right, right. How do we, how do you, as a parent, how do you, one thing I've struggled with, just to tell all, is talking to other parents. It's hard when you have friends that aren't on the same page as you.
That is, it takes a lot of confidence
Yeah,
and
I'm overloaded with confidence,
a
and
lot
I
of,
get very
you are very confident. Not everyone is as confident. Yeah. So I think that's the slippery slope where, oftentimes you'll hear, I'm sure your mom friends text you, "Hey, well, what are you going to do? Hey, what are you going to do?" And then it's sort of a slippery slope. But if there's one mom who's like, "I'm not doing this," and the kid has that inner strength, then, that's sort of the parent that you want to sort of flock with.
yeah,
So it's when that sort of gets spirals out of control and everyone's values sort of slip a bit. That's the scary part. But I do understand that peer pressure. I mean, we as moms, I'm in my 40s. I still feel that, right? That's hard, but it's your kids.
and even when it's not, I'll tell you, I got into a situation where there were, well, I was, a lot. There were parents, and they were giving children alcohol,
Hmm.
and 10th graders, and I was floored. And I was saying to my husband, I was like, you were president of the KA house. I was, I never missed a party. Like, we are not like dorky type people. Like,
Right.
we had fun.
You're right.
But like, I suddenly feel like I'm like this like nerdy outcast. It was really, I, that's how it felt.
Yes, it's how it feels. It is how it feels.
And I
Like
was,
you're prudish, right? And
yes,
nobody wants to feel that way.
no,
But we know way more now than we did when we were kids, right? We just know
right,
way more.
right. But I did say, I'm not, we're not, we're not doing that. And I noticed that my child really led the way of, I don't want to be there.
Mhm.
And that it was a pretty powerful moment though for me. And I said it, and I had a mom call me later, and she said, I just wanted to call you. I know that was a problem for you, and I was wrong.
Mm. Wow, that sounds like a good friend.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay. And that was hard because I really admired that person, you know,
Mhm.
and I felt like I was going to lose out, because a lot of times this crowd is the fun crowd,
Right.
you
And
know?
you don't wanna be judgy. Yeah.
No, no, but like I have to be a mama
Right.
first, like you said. And but that was nice to have kind of what you're saying of this person saying, "Hey, I I kind of get where you're coming from now,"
Right.
you
Yeah.
know. And I have the ability, I think, from what I do for a living, is I hear the stories from parents. I know about the falling off golf carts and the sexual assault, and I
All
get
the things.
I
Yep.
get all those stories, and it's
Yep.
hard for me not to. I always think it could be my family.
Yes. Yes. And isn't it wild? I wonder if you ever think like these strangers, they're followers, they're friends, of course, but like they're probably telling you more than they're probably telling their best friends sometimes. Right. So
Yeah,
that's a reflection that I think we should all have is, you should be able to feel comfortable telling your best friends, like, hey, I'm not comfortable with you serving my kid alcohol or whatever it may be.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for some of us, we we don't even know. We had a situation here of a friend, and their child was in a car and was driving, had not been drinking, and the driver said, "It's my car, I'm driving," and insisted on being the driver.
Yeah.
And the driver was killed, and
Mm,
another child was killed, and another child was really hurt and still suffering a lot of hurt. And when that happened, it was like our house that night. I remember my son Thomas said, Can I go spend the night?" And I said, "Absolutely not. We have a lot of talking to do."
right.
But honestly, Leslie, it had never occurred to me to handle that situation.
Right.
Like when we think we have them all handled, there's one more situation. Like,
Exactly.
you know, it
Yeah.
was it was new.
Yeah. And we always say often it's not that first decision, it's the second bad decision, right? So yes, it was a bad decision of that boy to drink in the first place, but then to drive it's the second decision that's often the worst one. So
Right.
it's just, but
Right.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's a horrible story.
No, but I think it enabled me to say, what do you do if you're driving and someone older than you says, "Get out of the car, I'm driving"? What
Right.
what would be your options then? You can call me. You
Yes.
you can get out of the car and just say goodbye.
Right.
But like we have to practice and go through those things.
Right.
I think we're having these conversations. Does it come back to this kind of parent permissiveness with alcohol,
Hmm.
which it feels like it does to me.
Right.
It feels like it's coming to that. And not that I want to be the judgy McJudgerson,
Right.
but
But it's all
if
risky
we're
behaviors, all of these risky behaviors. You
right,
just want your kid to be safe and you just want your kid to thrive, right? So anything that's going to get in the way of that is a conversation that people should have with their kids. We all
right.
want that.
So how do we how do we talk to our children, our teenagers, when we're not going to be there? Like, how do we prepare them for all those little decisions they're going to have to make when we're not there? And are they going to listen to my opinion?
Yes, they're going to listen to you. They're going to roll their eyes. They're going to act like they're not listening. They're listening. And they listen to so much more than we all want to think. I know the parents have often heard that, but they listen to everything, especially, and they want to know where you stand on issues because they really want those boundaries. Those boundaries make them feel very safe.
Okay.
So, we always say start early, start often. So if there's someone on watching tonight that has a 5-year-old and the 5-year-old says, mom, dad, parent, grandma, can I have a sip of that? You explain it's not just no and putting them down or saying that's silly. It's explaining to them why a kid can't have that alcohol, explaining that why in an
Right.
age appropriate way. And then as those kids get older, especially in middle school, they, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade, they're fascinated with their bodies and how their bodies work and what's happening to their bodies. So that's a really good time to explain alcohol, cannabis, any of those risky behaviors, because they're ripe for that. And most kids haven't had a drink at that age. So we have a program for that, but that's a really good time for parents to start. And then if they're a little later, high school, that's when you have the conversation about the if X, then Y, right? And role
Right.
playing with your kid. You're going out for homecoming or you're going out with friends. If something happens, please call me, that sort of thing.
Right. And you, when I was on your website, it does do that kind of role playing.
Yeah.
And I find that is help. That's like child development 101.
Yes.
You know, so many things you can tell somebody, but what are you going to do? Hey, come on, get in the car. Let's go.
Right.
You know, what are you going to do? Let's practice.
It's a
So,
practice, right? And it makes them think through what their scenario is going to be. You just want them to stay safe.
mhm, mhm. What about, so your preteens, what are you saying to your preteens? I know you said you have a program, but what is it exactly you're saying to an 11, 12-year-old?
Yeah, alcohol, you're too young for alcohol. It's, if the kid's a sports player, alcohol will make them not be able to run fast, right?
Mm,
Or if your kid's a musician, alcohol is going to affect their ability to play their chords or whatever, hit the beat on the right time. And it will delay them developmentally. So, again, that program goes through the physicality of alcohol and what it does to the body. And kids typically think, "Ooh, I don't really want that in my system," and will turn away from it.
right, right, right. No, that's really good. That's really good. Um, and I guess I'm also hearing like practice what you preach.
Yes. Yes. I think if you're a parent out there and you are behaving irresponsibly or your drinking is too much, you should probably talk to your doctor and sort of reflect on that, right? So you can go down a scary path quickly, and everyone should sort of be reflective of their drinking behaviors, I think.
Hmm. And they really do. They really do. I just feel like they watch you like a hawk. Mine are particularly, uh, well, my children, but had gone out to dinner and I had a glass of wine, and I guess I had driven, but I had one glass of wine and we'd been at dinner a couple hours. And I said, they're like, you can't drive. And I said, well,
Mhm.
you might say this is wrong, but I was like, well, legally I can.
Yeah.
I have a small glass of wine. We've been here a couple hours. Like,
You've
this is
eaten.
I had eaten dinner,
Mhm.
this is a pizza. This
Yeah.
is what it is to be responsible,
Right.
right? Like, I am over 21 and you can do these things, because
Right.
I don't want it to be, it's all or nothing. And then
Right.
and I remember my parents, the one thing well, I thought they did it well, maybe they didn't. But I remember in high school, everybody would go, to some hog farm and drink. There wasn't any Uber, anything back then. And then they would all drive home. And my parents would say, if it's that important to you to have a beer or something, then you can sit right here and have it with us.
Right.
Well, I didn't want to do that either.
No.
But I also knew enough to know, like, don't, that the not drinking and driving. And we
Right.
spent a lot of time on the boat in the summer. And I think when I was, a teenager, it was like, well, you might knew not to drink and drive, but nobody worried about the boat. And I think
Right.
boats I mean, it's the same punishment, right?
Yes, it's the same risk, right? You're operating a heavy machinery. That's the same idea as driving.
And that to
And
me,
there's people in the water. They're not in other cars. They're in the water, right?
right,
So
right.
it's very
And
dangerous.
there are no lanes. So you're just,
Correct. Yeah, all the
out.
things. Yeah.
But I think that the boating thing we have really stressed, of like, don't think that, or to my husband, like, don't think that, if we're going to have it's the same thing. It's the same,
Yes.
just
Totally
like
agree.
a car. Because we
Yeah.
don't want kids to get on boats and think, oh, well, it's fine. I'm on a boat. No big
Right.
deal.
Yep.
That's kind of an important one. So it's getting ready to be Mother's Day. And how do we, I can't get past this, like, mommy needs wine.
Yes. Yep.
And how is it just that it's sales and teacher gifts? Like, nobody give a
The
teacher.
teacher, that is bananas to me. I just think it's misguided. It's not that it's not funny. In some cases it is, but I think we can do better with our humor to suggest that just because your teacher takes care of your kid all day, they have to have the alcohol, right? I'm sure there's other gifts that teacher wants.
Right. I have found that teachers really like cash.
Yes. Cash, Target gift cards.
Yeah. I mean,
But cash is never wrong.
yeah. If you're busy, you got a 20, a 50, you give 100, however much you got.
Yeah.
Just give cash. I
Yeah,
love cash. I love it
yeah,
over a gift card because then the gift card, I'm like, where's the gift card?
exactly. And teachers these days need buku appreciation for all the things they do. So, a handwritten card with some cash would also be kind to them.
Yes, very good point. Very good
Yeah.
point. Um, so we also have, how is alcohol related to some of these like TikTok challenges?
I'm not on TikTok,
Oh,
but
well,
I don't know.
on
So
there just,
educate me if those are.
I'm only on there to look at things, but it seems like there is a lot of TikTok and alcohol.
I know about the bogs, the Borgs,
Oh, I don't know
um,
about that.
the gallons, the blackout. I'm on a children
Oh, well,
interrupting.
I have a babysitter here just to keep a 9-year-old away from me for 30.
Oh, nice. I just have children knocking all the time. So it's blackout gallons, and where it's college students who walk around with the gallon jugs and they pour things into it, and there's mixed concepts of that, right? So if you don't want to be drinking, you want to look like you are, you can carry water or a little coloring in it. But as for the but pouring more in than you should have is obviously very irresponsible. But
Mm.
I guess I'm just not familiar with the other TikTok stuff that's happening.
Well, I think it kind of brings social media and alcohol are sort of similar with brain development.
Hmm.
And so if you're seeing all this behavior and it's normalizing it.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yes, the algorithm's just going to throw you
Yeah,
what you
take
already think,
a shot.
reaffirming what you already think. Yeah,
Right,
right,
right, right. And so I think we tend to think, well, social media, it's all fine. They're going to have to learn it. We're going to teach them responsibly. But then when you're aware of what they're seeing and getting and what people are doing
right.
um, and alcohol too, I think the relationship it has to um, sexual assaults, you know, obviously drunk driving, or even if you're not drinking, you're in a car, just minding your own business, going home,
Yes.
like that bride at Folly Beach.
That is a terrible, terrible, terrible story.
Um,
But
and I had
yes,
somebody
the
that said,
risk.
"Oh, they shouldn't have been on a golf cart." And it's like, you, you can't. I mean, drunk drivers are going to get you no matter where you are. I mean, you can't ride around in a tank. The only thing we can do is not drink and drive.
Correct. And I think blaming the victim in that regard is wildly irresponsible given
Right,
where they were
right,
and the how many golf carts are on those roads down there, right?
right, 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 right. Well, and
Um,
having, I lost my only sibling to cancer, and it wasn't anybody's fault. And
right.
I was thinking, like, with her, like, if that were, because you and I'm 48, so I'm right at the age where, like, it could be me or it could be my daughter, this kind of middle ground.
Yes.
It's like, boy, you work so hard to raise a child, and
Yes.
you put sunscreen on them, and you're spending 30 minutes talking to them about anything. And then in
Hmm.
1 second, because somebody made a bad decision,
Yes.
life is over.
Over. Yes. Horrible.
And it could have been prevented. It's not cancer.
That's the problem. It's preventable. It did not have to happen.
It didn't have to happen.
No,
Um,
no. I did see an interview. It was a written piece about that crash in the Courier Post Journal earlier. And
right.
what I noticed is it was a family member said it's not an accident, it's a crash. And we say that a lot in this community, traffic safety community, and in it's not an accident. It's not an
Oh,
accident to get in a car and drive drunk. That takes a lot of foresight, forethought, and um, it is a crash. So calling these things car accidents, we just don't like that term.
that's really smart. I
It's a crash.
never,
An accident is tripping over a stone in the middle of
right.
the
It's
sidewalk.
an accident.
It's an accident. A crash, like what happened, is where people lose their lives.
Right. Right. Oh, thank you for that clarification. I've never heard that before. So before we leave, what are some of the resources on your site for parents?
We have we do a lifetime of conversations about alcohol. So if there's alcohol responsibility and alcohol involved, we want to be a resource for you. So for parents, we start as young again as 5, and go all the way through college with our Alcohol 101 Plus program. But there's a number of different programs on there. Ask, Listen, Learn is the one for middle school that I mentioned. And then there's the role playing sort of questions that's on there. And a number of pieces from bloggers, influencers, just sort of talking about their own experiences of, do I let my kids sip alcohol or do I not let my kids sip alcohol? Or they went to a ball game and people behind them were very drunk and that, started a conversation. So any of these are just little conversations. They don't have to be hard. But again, it's having that conversation with your kid that is that protective factor. Even if it makes you super uncomfortable, your kid doesn't need to know that. Just have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I haven't noticed that it's made my children uncomfortable.
I'm sure not. I mean,
it made me uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable.
Yes. Right. Well, some of us have felt disingenuous because it's do as I say, not as I did back in the day, right? But again, we know more now.
Right. Well, I think but we want our children to know, even our, 13-year-old, I think, but the same thing, like you don't get in the car with an adult that's been drinking.
Correct.
You don't get in a boat with an adult that's been drinking.
Right.
You can call and say, Mom, I don't feel well. What can we do, right, to kind of foster some of these? What's our escape plan if we need,
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
So that's helpful. Well, and now so what do parents do when it's senior trip?
Yeah.
Okay? We got seniors, they're graduating and they're going to have beach week. I don't have a senior, so I'm thankful this doesn't apply to me. What do we do as parents to get ready for beach week?
I think you have a number of repeated conversations. I can't judge that for every family out there, but it's the conversations, and then it's your own decision. You're probably the one paying for the trip. You call the shots on the trip, right? So you get to say whether the kid goes or doesn't go. And if the kid doesn't go, the kid is most likely going to go on to lead a very successful life. They might be mad at you for a little bit,
right?
But they're going to get over it.
Right.
So,
my oldest is really kind of like when we talk about alcohol, and I know it's not going to be like this forever, but I think he is also aware of that we have some pretty hard line rules. Like if you drive a car and you're drinking, we will never buy you a car ever.
Right.
So and he knows that, like, they mean it. Where I think when I see the 16-year-old that had the DUI that's now out driving around, it's like, no, sorry, Bobby, that's over for you.
Right.
And is that helpful to kind of give some of those very clear?
Yes. Okay. That's the boundaries. Yes. The guardrails.
It doesn't mean we don't love you or we don't.
Oh my gosh. It means you do love them when you do that. And I think a kid knows that, your love language is, I care deeply about you. So I'm going to threaten you with this because I want you to live a long time and be with me. Right? I love you. That's what you're saying.
And what you said before was, well, they made a mistake. It's not an accident. It was a crime.
No. Right.
That is not a mistake.
Right.
That was an intentional choice.
Yes. So
that's done. Okay. Right. Well, this will be good. Now I have a year to come up with my plan.
I believe in you.
Well, and now I have your cell number, so watch out.
Call me anytime.
Thank y'all. And go over to responsibility.org. And I've told them, like, this, my blog and my page is kind of what's happening in my life. And I have teenagers and we're moving into college. Like, these are all really relevant things to what is happening in my mind. And I like to think that I'm not alone when I'm like, I want to do better, but I don't know what to do. And that's okay to say, I don't know. We don't have to pretend to be experts.
No, we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah. Most of the time. Well, thank you, Leslie. I sure appreciate it.
Yes, it was so good to see you.
Okay. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.